Welcome, everybody. I'm David Yakir, and I've been thinking about masculinity. So, I've invited novelist Elliot Katz, whose new book, Being a Strong Man a Woman Wants, Timeless Wisdom on Being a Man, is out now, and I can't wait to understand what being a man should be. Also, did you know that as the wiser and more mature of us, you are now the face of Facebook? So, that's what we'll yak about today. What's up, everybody? David Yakir here for Yak About Today, hoping you are better, healthier, and more informed than any generation that came before. So if the years 46 to 64 mean something to you, then this is the place you want to be. Now put your headphones on, go for a run, and listen to what we yak about today. Okay, before we get to our summer series, and Elliot, I found a piece of information I thought you'd all find interesting. It seems like Facebook, our favorite social platform, is starting to lose its younger audience, who's moving to Instagram, which of course is owned by Facebook. And Facebook is now the social media of the wiser and more mature of us. So I just wanted to let you guys know that, and now we'll just continue with our summer series and our interview with Elliot Katz. And we are back. I'm David Yakir. You're listening to Yak About Today. And as promised, I've got Elliot Katz here, whose book, Being a Strong Man a Woman Wants, Timeless Wisdom on Being a Man. Welcome, Elliot.
Great to be here.
So, Elliot, this is crazy. I've been reading through your stuff and all that. And I'm sensing, and I've got a bunch of questions, starting with how did this all happen to begin with? But you've got an interesting take on masculinity. So why don't you take us back to I'm sorry, let me step back. You're known for having written all these nonfiction books, right?
Right.
Right? And all of a sudden you come up with this book about relationships and men and what's right with men, what's wrong with men. So, okay, give us the story that started it.
Well, like a lot of people, I went through a divorce, and at first I blamed the other person. Then I came to the point of asking myself, what do I have to learn from this? I don't want to go through this again. And that set me on a journey to learn, what does it mean to be a man in a relationship? And first thing I did, I started listening to other men. And the more I listened, the more I realized, a lot of us are confused. Then I started reading books on relationships. And they really didn't say anything to me about what it means to be a man in a relationship. And then I turned to that timeless wisdom that, over the centuries, fathers and other older male role models used to teach younger men about being a man. And I was blown away because it coincided with what I heard women say is lacking in men today. They don't show leadership. They don't make decisions. They don't take responsibility. There seems to be this giant disconnect between all the things that men have been told over the past few decades and what women really want. And it really started with the boomers, right? It's like we were going to change everything. We were going to change masculinity, the old image of that stern father, husband. No, we were going to be soft and sensitive. And it's good to be sensitive, but we kind of lost the masculinity in that transition.
So you think sort of those of us who came out of the summer of love in 67 and really got in touch with our feelings and really started communicating with women, you think we've taken it a step too far and maybe we sort of have to roll back who we are and take on those traits of masculinity sort of mixed in with how we evolved or something like that?
I think so. It's what it is, we want to be sensitive, we want to communicate. But what that became was, we'll ask our wives, well, what do you want? The decision needs to be made. And we think, well, we're being sensitive and non-controlling. We'll just ask her what she wants and we'll do it her way. And we didn't realize that women hate having to tell men what to do. They really want a man who's a leader, not a controlling tyrant, but a man who just avoids decisions, avoids stepping forward and dealing with situations. It's a big, big turnoff. And the more I talk to people, the more I talk to women, the more the book came out and was translated in 24 languages around the world, I realized this is a common situation that women want men who are leaders, who can make decisions, who take responsibility. And this generation we avoided it. We really didn't learn the insights that fathers used to teach younger men in previous generations.
And you're not suggesting that women give up her share of making decisions and playing a leadership role in the family. You're just thinking, your thinking is that men step back too far, right? And allowing women to make all the decisions, and it should be a more equal. You think it's not equal, is that it? You just
I think. And a lot of men think they're working together with their wives. I've talked to many men. They think, I'm working together with her. But really what they're doing is they're asking her what to do, and then they're doing whatever she tells him to do. And women hate that. They really want a man who can step forward and show leadership. Not controlling tyrant, not, if she makes a decision to do something, not undermining her. That's stupid. But, when there's a situation that needs to be dealt with, she really likes a man who could step forward and deal with it. And all us men, not all of us, but most of us in this generation, we thought, oh, no, we're going to be non-controlling. We'll just let her make the decisions, and then she should be happy. But then she's not happy because she really wants a man who can show that leadership. It's really amazing because I've talked to lots of women, and whenever they ask me, what does your book say it means to be a man? I said, you want in one sentence, it means to be a leader. And they smile and they say, how do I find a man like that? There seems to be something missing in today's men. They don't act like men. And it's interesting thing is when I talk to men, a lot of men will say, oh, I've never heard this before. No one's ever told me this before. But if they implement it, they go home and then start showing leadership and not waiting for their wives to tell them what to do all the time. There's a big difference. Women are a lot happier.
Yeah, you know what I noticed reading through this is that, this was a touchy subject for you to tackle in many ways, because you have to walk that fine line right down the middle without taking away from how men have evolved in a positive way, right? And at the same time, not taking away the woman's equal role in leadership and decision-making. But what caught my attention also, maybe you can speak to this, is that your advice is like to men, you're saying, take responsibility, right? And, I'm not sure. Actually, you have to tell me because you're the one that wrote the book, but I'm not sure how many men out there aren't taking responsibility for their roles in the relationship. But obviously you have better data, but also at the same time, you're asking women to help men make decisions. The reason I say it's walking such a fine line is it's almost like you think most men have lost the ability of being what we used to think of as a man.
Well, I think what I've learned is that for a man needs to learn it. It usually doesn't come naturally to a man. And taking responsibility. So what happens is, a man will say, well, I'll let the woman decide. And then he figures he's not responsible, for if it goes wrong, or if she pushes him into doing something that he thinks is going to go wrong and it goes wrong just like he thought it would, well, then he can blame her. Well, that's a very damaging thing. When you start blaming your wife, it's a big, big turnoff. And if sometimes, there'll be a situation at home. I mean, I've seen this because I've been coaching lots of guys. There'll be a situation, the man will blame his wife. Well, my daughter is dropped out of high school. She's doing nothing. Why? My wife's not doing anything about it. Well, she's not doing anything about it because you got to step forward and deal with it. There are some things she can deal with, but if she can't deal with this, then you have to step forward and take responsibility for dealing with it and not just blame your wife. I've heard this so many times, men blaming their wives for problems. And I said to them, well, you let it go on. You have to step forward. There's no sympathy. As much as we believe in gender equality, there's no sympathy for a man who just blames his wife for all the problems. And it was really like a turning point in my learning. And I was talking to this fellow who was also separated. This is years ago. And, we were like, so many things we had in common. Like we were victims of our wives. We were wallowing in our victimhood until he said his wife ran up $50,000 on the credit cards. I looked at him. I said, well, how could you let that go on? I would never let that go on. You have children. You have responsibilities. So, yes, it was terrible that she ran up so much, debt on the credit cards, but you let it go on. People, like, I didn't have sympathy for him because I said, well, how could you let that go on? So it's really, the lesson is take responsibility. You see a situation, don't just think, well, I'll just blame my wife and I won't be responsible. No, people still expect you to step forward and take responsibility.
All right. So, Elliot, we're going to have to stop for our sponsor and then for our commercial breaks. But when I come back, I have some questions for you that I think would be interesting for you to answer because they're personal. Anyway, I'm David Yakir. I'm here with Elliot, and we'll be back after the break. I want to take a moment to talk to you about New Vision Eye Center. For the last couple of years, they've been a sponsor of this show, and I couldn't be prouder. I've met so many people that have walked up to me and thanked me for recommending them. I hear all sorts of stories about how they've worked miracles. And as you know, I've been a patient of New Vision Eye Center for years. So when I say go see Dr. Minotti, Reinauer, Tate, and O'Brien, it's because I wouldn't trust my eyes to anyone else. All right, we are back. I'm David Yakir. You're listening to Yak About Today, and I'm here with Elliot Katz, whose book, Being the Strong Man a Woman Wants, Timeless Wisdom on Being a Man. And quite frankly, I didn't know there was so much advice I needed on being a man in a successful relationship. So, Elliot, I got a few questions, so maybe you can enlighten me, because I don't know, there's something about the subject matter that makes me a little nervous in dealing with my relationship and how, the other half's going to respond to me and that type of thing. So why don't we go through a couple of questions and see where we're at, all right? So the first question, I think, is why don't men themselves realize what the necessary traits a man should have in a relationship? You would think this is something we should know. We know our partner, we know what she likes, we know what she dislikes. Wouldn't we be getting, the feedback from her through the course of the relationship? Or is she also, feeling it but not communicating it?
That's a good question. What I found is that women say it, but they say it in language that we don't really understand. So when a woman complains, I always have to tell him what to do, or sometimes she'll say, he's not doing enough, and the man will say, what do you mean? I work all day, I come home, I take care of the kids, I give them baths, I change diapers. What she's really saying is he's not being a leader. And that's really what she wants. She doesn't want us to tell him to take out the garbage. That's a common thing. Like I speak to social workers and say, women will come, I have to tell him to take out the garbage, and the man thinks, what's wrong with reminding me? It's because a woman doesn't want to have to tell a man what to do. It makes her feel like he is a child and she is his mother. So, but the way she says it to the man doesn't really understand what she's saying. So it really takes a man to teach another man about being a man. So she wants you to be a leader. She wants you to know what's going on and see what needs to be done and step forward and do it. And you keep doing that, you'll be her hero. She'll love you for it.
All right. You know what it reminds me of? We used to do segments, interesting segments with a philosophy teacher and things like that, and I think it was based on a philosopher called Wittgenstein, who said, we don't really have language, if I remember this correctly, language doesn't have the capability to really communicate, the messages we need to communicate. So it reminds me a little of that. So here's a good question, and I'll relate it to me. I think one of the great things, how I evolved, is I became much more sensitive as a person. I talk about my feelings all the time, and I share them, and I'm really open. I've broken through that sort of shield of masculinity that my father had, my grandfather had, where they didn't really talk. They wouldn't even say, I'm not feeling well, let alone talk about their feelings. Are you suggesting that goes away and that doesn't have a place in today's world?
Well, it's a matter of degree. So being sensitive, if you're being sensitive to other people's feelings, that's very good. But, if a man comes home every day and starts complaining about, my boss was so nasty to me today, or, just always pouring out their guts, like how miserable they are. It really turns a woman off. She really, that idea, she wants a tower of strength. I mean, women have told me this. They said, I want a man to be the rock that I can lean on. If there's a situation where you're sad, perhaps somebody you love dearly passed away, okay, you can express your feelings and be sad and cry. But if you're doing that all the time, you're not being the rock that she can lean on. You're not being the tower of strength that she can look up to. Because that's really, she wants to feel protected. She wants to feel that if there's a difficult situation, she can look to you to step forward and deal with it. She wants to feel you can protect her. So if you're always expressing your feeling, if it comes across as weakness, it's a big turnoff.
All right, so I think I'm going to sneak a little sneaky question in here, and I'm not sure. I don't want to throw you off here, but we're in a very modern age, and relationships are not made up always of men and women. Sometimes they're women and women, and sometimes they're men and men. Is the book and what you have to say applicable outside of just men, women? Can it apply to two women, right? Or can apply to two men? Or is this outside the purview of what you were dealing with?
Yeah, it's really outside the purview. I really don't know. I mean, it's like this book was really for my own learning. It was like writing down what I was learning and stuff that I would learn and say, wow, I wish I had known this. I wish I had known this. This kind of stuff that I read as it blew me away. I said, boy, that would have changed things. So that it was really, and that it's like a lot of books. This is what I learned that made a big difference in my life. I want to share it with other people. And the response has been that it's making a big difference in people's lives and people's relationships.
All right, so let me jump off on that. So tell me, pick out a few traits of Elliot before and Elliot now.
Well, it's a very good question. I feel in many ways I'm a completely different person, different man. I was always trying to please. I thought if I could just please her enough, she would be happy. I always tried to go along. I figured, I was like, I'm being nice. I said, well, this is the way you want to do it. Okay, we'll do that. We'll do that. Well, I don't think it's a good idea, but she insisted. So I said, okay, we'll do it that way. I said, now I would never do that. I realized, here I thought I was being good. And these were good things, positive contributions to the relationship, but they were really destroying the relationship. She wanted, she doesn't, because ultimately I started blaming her for things. She wanted a man, like, this is wrong, we're not doing it. To see a situation needs to be dealt with our children or whatever, step forward, this is what we're going to do. Do research. Don't say we're going to do crazy things. No, find out what's a reasonable solution. Because if I ask her, what are we going to do? She does the same thing, does the research. But if I do it, I say, well, this is what we have to do to help our daughter. Then that's showing leadership. That impresses her. I remember we go to marriage counselors, and she said, I'm not contributing enough. And I'm thinking, well, I do all these things, but I was just doing whatever she was telling me to do. That's not what a woman wants in a man. And I've talked to so many women, and they all say this. They all say, yeah, I don't want to tell him what to do. I don't want to make the decisions. I don't want to be the leader. I want him to be a leader and make decisions. She doesn't want a tyrant, but she doesn't want a man who keeps telling her to make the decisions. Now I make decisions.
All right. We're going to continue. But first, I got to let the broadcast audience know that we're coming to the end of the broadcast version of this interview. And that if you want to hear the entire interview with Elliot Katz, remember, you can always tune in to yakabouttoday.com. And by the way, we've got something new. Spotify just picked us up this week. So you can go to Spotify and listen to this, or go to yakabouttoday.com. We're hosted on all the major podcasting sites as well. So to my broadcasting audience, I will see you next week. Okay, we're back. I'm David Yakir. You're listening to Yak About Today, and we are around the world for our entire podcasting audience. So I'm hoping that some of you from the broadcast side are listening to the rest. We've got Elliot Katz here, and we're talking a bit about masculinity back then, what happened to it, and where we should be right now, according to Elliot's thinking. All right? So I'm really you know why? I'm going to ask you two questions about how people are responding to the book from a male and female point of view. And the reason is that I my natural instinct, depending on how they read the book and how they take the information, is men will like it because you're giving them, you're saying it's okay to go back to some of the old ways, be a leader, be a man, don't take any shit, that type of thing. And so I guess men would sort of look for you, who has picked out the advice to give them, and say, yeah, I'll take his advice. I'm going to go home, and when my wife says, what do you think? I'll tell her what I think, instead of returning, hey, honey, whatever you think. So let's talk about men. I mean, I'm guessing that I was right about this, but how are men responding to the book?
Well, David, I have to tell you that I had the same expectation that you have, and it was the complete opposite. Men were like the ones I had to convince. Like, men would disagree with me. They say, no, this isn't what women want. I would tell men, read the book, just do it, you'll see. Don't let your wife see. Just do it, you'll see. Things will be better. And they would argue with me, and they say, no, this isn't what women want. And then the women had the opposite reaction. I didn't want women to see it, but no, I think women buy most of the books. They buy it. They give it to their husbands. They give it to their boyfriends. They give it to their sons. They say, and they ask me, how do I get my husband to read it? One woman said to me, I'm going to give him the book. It's a short book. It takes about an hour to read. And then I'm going to say, after you finish reading it, I'm waiting for you in the bedroom in my negligee. I have to tell you, at first, I didn't think today's woman would freely admit, I want a man who's a leader. I mean, it seems so contrary to all the ideas you hear today. But no, women freely admit, I want a man who takes the lead. I don't want to have to make all the decisions. I don't want to tell him what to do. So, when I speak to groups, it's the best thing when I have both men and women there, because the men will say, no, this isn't true. And the women will say, this is what we want. Listen to what he's saying, which I have to admit to you was the complete opposite of what I expected. I'll tell you another story. I was once on a phone-in show, and I only realized after the host thought he was setting me up, that he interviewed me. He said he disagreed with what I said. Then he said, we're only going to have women call in, and we'll keep score if they agree with you or they agree with me. We had 5 women call. All I'm saying, I'm so frustrated with my husband. He doesn't show any leadership. I'm fed up with him. He can't make a decision. Anyway, I realized he thought all the women would call in and yell at me. I'm the chauvinist. No, they don't want a controlling tyrant, but they want a man who can take charge.
So what about all these years? Men have complained that I've been emasculated, by my wife or my girlfriend and that type of thing. That would seem to show sort of quite the opposite, that women were pushing back on men.
Well, that's a good question. So when a man feels, I might hear that all the time, man feels emasculated or they're broken. And I said, well, you let it happen. See, what happens is the man thinks, okay, I'll let her decide this, I'll let her decide that. I'll be a nice guy. And, men will say, why let my wife make these decisions? Because the decisions don't really matter to me. Like, whatever she wants is fine with me. And they don't realize, like when your wife calls you at work and say, what do you want for supper? And chicken or fish, and whatever you make, anything you make will be fine. She called you because she wants you to make the decision. So after a period of that, it's like, and then comes something that, well, no, this is important to me. I want it done this way. And then you get completely ignored. And that's when a man feels emasculated. Hey, I gave in to you all these things. We did it your way. Now this is important to me, and I'm being completely ignored. So that happens because you weren't doing your part and taking the lead. Because really, it only happens because the man lets it happen. He only gets emasculated because he lets her do it to him. He's got to step forward and be a leader right from the start. But I mean, if you haven't been a leader for the past 10 years, it's not too late. Step forward, look for situations that are not being dealt with. Sorry, if she's dealing with something in a certain way, don't undermine her. Like, if you see a problem's not being dealt with, step forward and deal with it, and just keep doing that. You'll see, you'll be her hero. She'll love it.
In the book, you sort of have, if women read the book, you sort of have sort of advice for how women should deal with the men or have conversations. And I can't help, and I'm sorry about this, to imagine a sit down, with a man and woman sitting around the table, and the woman is sitting there and saying, "Look, I need you. I want to encourage you." I'm sorry, it's such a funny scenario for me. I want to encourage you to start making decisions. And the husband sits there and says, "Well, what decisions would you like me to make?" Right? And she's saying, "Well, I don't know. Just for God's sake, make a decision for once in your life." So I'm having this imaginary conversation about this advice, because you do. You say, you should. You're asking a woman to tell her man where he can step up and be a leader and things like that. And it seems such an odd negotiation sitting around the table. I almost feel like they're going to take out pieces of paper and say, "Okay, you'll make all decisions in this area. I'll make all the decisions here, right? And where we disagree, we'll sit down and make a compromise." Or maybe that doesn't work. Maybe you're saying that, a man has to decide also when a compromise is no good, and when he sort of wants to make the decision, take the leadership on this and make the decision. And was that? Did I make sense there?
Oh no, I understand what you're saying, David. But actually, those kinds of conversations often don't work when you sit there. I want you to do this, you do this. It's really, you have to put it into action. So it's not like the wife sits down at the table and says, "I want you to make more decisions." It's like when there's a decision to be made, and the man says, "Oh, what do you want? What should we do? Whatever you decide, whatever you want." Just say, "You decide," and the woman should say to the man, "You decide," and don't say anything more. Don't let him get you to make the decision. Let him make the decision. And if he says, "Well, I don't know what to do," well, just say, "Well, do some research." These are a lot of decisions aren't that difficult. I couldn't count the number of women who have said to me they go on a date with a guy for a cup of coffee and he can't choose a place for a cup of coffee. He wants her to choose, and then when they finally get to a place, he can't even choose a table. He wants her to decide everything. And I've had women say to me, "That's a big turnoff." It's like, if he can't even choose a place for a cup of coffee, how's he going to handle these challenges that happen in family life? So when there's a situation, it's like, don't discuss philosophy, just apply it. When the decision is made, don't let him get you to make the decision. Just say, "You decide." You want to go to Starbucks? He says, "Let's go to Starbucks," and go. Right. Don't let him get you to make the decision. And the same thing with handling situations. Like something you could say, our daughter is this. Could you handle that situation? And he says, "Well, I don't know what to do. What should I do?" Well, just do research. That's what I do. Google it on the internet. Find a solution, implement it, and just keep doing it and encourage him. And the thing is, unless he'll probably do it differently than the woman will do it. But unless he's going to do something dangerous or damaging, just let him do it his way. And then praise him for doing it. Because one of the reasons men avoid leadership and decisions is because they're afraid of being criticized. They think, well, if they avoid it, then the woman won't criticize them. But believe me, she'll still criticize him, because if she does it wrong, she'll say, "Oh, you should have told me not to do it. You should have known I shouldn't have done that." Right?
All right.
Experience that?
So as we come to the end here, there's one thing that really did catch my attention. It was sort of wonderful, and I know it's a need for all men, and that's to be appreciated. Right. And you give that kind of advice to women, is that you really do have to show appreciation for when your other half does do something right, or, does fulfill the obligation, that he should. And that's something I think we all like to hear.
Absolutely. You appreciate him and not criticize him. Tell him he made a good decision. And you appreciate him handling a situation, he'll do it more. Everybody's like that. Everybody wants to feel what their effort has been valued by the other person.
All right. We're coming to an end. I want to thank you, Elliot, for being here. I want to tell everybody, and I'll put this into our broadcast, that's Elliot Katz. Being a Strong Man a Woman Wants is available as a paperback from Amazon.com and bookstores, as well as an ebook for Kindle, iBooks, and Kobo. So thanks again, Elliot. And
thanks for having me.
We'll have you back again to learn how well I'm doing as a man.
Okay, absolutely.
All right.
Take out the papers and the trash, or you don't get no spending cash. If you don't Don't talk back. Just finish cleaning up your room. Let's see that dust fly with that broom. Get all that garbage out of sight. Or you don't go out Friday night. Yakety yak. Don't talk back. Don't you give me no dirty looks. Your father simply knows the cooks. Tell all your hula friends outside. You ain't got time to take a ride. Yakety yak. Don't talk back.